Sonic Unleashed. Whether you love it or hate it, this game was a very significant step for Sonic and is held in very high regard from a lot of people. At least, that's how it is for the HD version, but what about the Wii version? Now look, obviously I'm not going to pretend like I'm the first person to talk about this game or anything. There's been a few videos in recent memory of people shedding light on it, and I think that's great. I just kind of felt like talking about random shit with the game that I think is pretty cool, and maybe talking about stuff not a lot of other people may have bothered to mention. Like, look at this game's cool ass Wii save data icon, for instance. Like, it's freaking animated, bro. Now, if you know me personally or just an avid viewer of my channel, you'll know that I've had quite the speedrun phase with this game as of recently, and I've been playing the day stages a lot. A big thing with this game I've noticed, at least on the speedrunning side of things, is that the badnik bounce of all things is like strangely prevalent. Especially considering this is like a 3D boost game and all. Maybe badnik bounce isn't exactly the right term for this, but like either way you're using the enemies to your advantage to get further in the stage pretty much. Like a good portion of the stages in this game have some part where you either ride up a chain of enemies or where you jump and bounce off an enemy to get to another part of the level. Like in Windmill Isle 1 for instance, right here you could just chain some homing attacks like normal, or you can carefully align yourself then boost and jump to ride along the chain of enemies for some good time save. There's action chains just like that in Rooftop Run and Jungle Joyride as well. It's small, sure, but it feels pretty satisfying, especially in Windmill Isle and Rooftop Run's case, where you have to do it in a 3D section and properly align yourself. I don't know if those exactly qualify as a badnik bounce, at least in like the same way like a badnik bounce in the classic games would work, and I'd understand if you say they didn't count as that, but I think these next few examples make a little more sense. In Dragon Road, for instance, right at the start, there's a massive string of enemies that rise up in the air that you can homing attack to access a different part of the level. But a very cool thing you can do here is you can stomp down onto the lower path, boost while holding upright, jump and bounce on this enemy, and then homing attack on the other enemy here, and boom. Like, that is just the coolest shit ever. And in Cool Edge, there's two smaller instances of this. Firstly, right here, after you exit the bobsled section, if you jump off this rail and stomp on this boost pad and input a slide, you'll go really fast. And if you jump and stomp through the ice here and onto this rail, you can jump off of it at a certain point and maintain your speed and bounce off this enemy, saving a few seconds as opposed to just going down the rail and taking a slow spring. Feels really cool to pull off. And then later in the level, after you dismount this rail, you can boost and drift through this small cave, and if your movement is on point, you can jump over this spring, bounce off this enemy, and land cleanly on the rail, which also feels really good to do. Again, I don't know if these exactly count as a badnik bounce, but either way, action chains like this are super cool, and they're a big reason why I wanted to make this video. I'm no game designer, so I might spout total nonsense in a second, but I feel like the action chains like this kind of reintroduce that like SA2 mech stage philosophy of racking up scores with enemy combos and shit, but with like that boost formula twist, I guess. Because like in this game, it isn't just the enemies that keep the chain going. Boost pads, springs, light dash trails, those all keep the chain going, which you're usually going to want because the bigger the chain, the more boost bars you get, which is super important in this game because of the segmented boost bar and how tight the management of it can be sometimes. Not to say there isn't clever boost management in HD Unleashed or anything, but boosting I feel like is a lot more of a commitment in Wii, where you're limited control during it and it's fixed length. It brings a lot more strategy and planning regarding boost and ring management. And speaking of rings, there's a cool mechanic in this game that I don't think is really in any other Sonic games to my knowledge, and that's the weird ring level up system. If you reach a threshold of 30, 60, and 90 rings, each one will reward you with an extra bar of boost and a full boost refill on top of that, which adds even more potential planning and strategizing with boost management. Like Jungle Joyride is a good example. At the beginning of this 2D section, you're ideally going to want 2 bars of boost here to ride this action chain up to this vine so you can boost onto the rail. If you don't grab like 60 rings out of the 70-ish in the beginning section of the level, you're going to be losing time. Another cool level up spot you can take advantage of is at the end of Windmill Isle 2 at the quick step section. Usually by this point you have like 200, 300 plus rings or something like that, and you're going to be boosting here a lot. and obviously we can only really boost for so long before running out, right? Well, if you purposely get hit by this interceptor here, you'll be put back at 60 rings. Then later on, after this first ramp, you can collect these rings until you get 90 of them again, and get a full boost refill. It's a super cool strat. Another cool thing I like taking advantage of is drift bonuses. If you drift for long enough, then you'll get a drift bonus, and it'll refill a tiny bit of your boost bar, about like half of it. It may not seem like a lot, but it'll make the difference over the course of a run, and there's a few key places for it. The biggest one I can think of is at the beginning of Dragon Road. After you get a rocket start, you don't want to boost immediately, but instead, hit these boost pads, and then get a drift bonus here, and then grab at least 8 of these rings, and then you can proceed the boost. And the reason we do this is because if you don't get that drift bonus at the start, even if you grab all 12 of those rings, you'll still barely be short on another bar of boost, which you'll need to boost through this enemy. Another good spot I can think of is at the beginning of Windmill Isle 2. Once you get the rocket start, boost and grab all of these rings, or at least most of them. You'll notice you'll just barely be short on another bar of boost, even if you grab all of them. So you'll want to do a drift and get a drift bonus, and from there, you'll have another bar of boost to continue on, and you get the idea. I'm glad the idea of restoring boost by drifting was actually kept for HD Unleashed and even Generations. It's a cool mechanic I don't see much appreciation for. Anyway though, I don't want to just talk about speedrun stuff for the whole video, and I'm sure you probably don't want to watch that either, so let's move on to something else. Sonic's model, or models I guess I should say. I like them both. Yeah, they're probably ugly and dated as shit, especially in the Werehog's case, but I think they're both super charming, I don't know. I like oily Sonic and frosty Werehog, they're funny. I think some day stages don't really do Sonic any favors and make him look a little worse, but stages like Jungle Joyride or Windmill Isle 2 do him a lot more justice. The Wii era of Sonic models was kind of like this weird in-between period from transitioning from something like Heroes to what we have today from Unleashed and Colors onwards. Models from something like the storybook games or even the Rush models are cool to look at, and they really bridge the gap between Adventure era and Modern era, and I think that's super cool. Also, this isn't really a model thing, but more so an animation thing, I guess, but I like Sonic's idols in this game. They're pretty cool and fun to take screenshots with in free cam. You can't really go wrong in this kind of department. Looks cool doing about anything. Anyway though, I'm sure a lot of you saw this coming, but another thing I and pretty much everyone else likes about this game is the Gaia Temples. It's pretty much like the thing people know this game for in comparison to HD Unleashed, which like I totally get. It's such a cool addition. I love opening the metal doors and doing the puzzles for collectibles. It's just so comforting to me, I don't know. The puzzles themselves are pretty fun and creative too, and a lot of them require you to switch between Sonic and the Werehog, kind of like Eggman Land in the HD version. It's super cool, honestly. Also, I can't talk about these temples without mentioning the song that plays in them. It's actually gorgeous. Definitely top 5 or top 3 songs in the franchise for me. There's not a lot like it. Also, I guess this is probably a given that they do this, but I love how all of the temples match the continent they're on. Most people already know the Apotos one. It's probably the first one people think of when Gaia Temples are brought up. The light shining from the top, the giant bell in the middle, and this weird spinny thing. It's super iconic. I also find it really cool how this is the only temple that Sonic can traverse without the Werehog. Chip has this line that's sorta related to it, and I think it's pretty cool. Halaska and Atabat also have some of my favorite looking temples. Also, fun fact, if you jump into this branch, you'll barely be able to jump off of it and you can clear the wall, so that's pretty cool. Also, some of these temples have these cool doors with a star on them, and you collect these planet tablets to open them, and it's how you access the bosses of whatever continent you're on. Not really anything special or anything, I just think the star symbol looks really cool. Anyway, another point I want to touch upon is just the differences between the day stages between Wii and HD. Like take Cool Edge for instance. In HD it's mostly outside, but in the Wii version it's like all in a cave. It's a cool contrast in my opinion. Jungle Joyride is also a good example for this. In HD you start on the docks and make your way into the jungle, but in Wii you start off in like this cool cliffside area and then make your way into the jungle, then you exit the jungle and make your way to the docks and the houses. The HD version feels a lot more prominent in the actual jungle aspect, while the the Wii version feels more like beachy, I guess. The actual jungle portion is a small 2D section and then you're just out of there. It's like less than a minute long. Also, the HD version has these like temple structures, especially towards the end. There's very little of that in Wii except for like the very last mission, which leads me to my next point. A lot of the missions in this game just reuse different sections of the level for whatever objective you're doing, but a select few missions have totally different layouts and aesthetics and honestly look all like totally different levels. Like what I said about the last Jungle Jorad mission, for example. You're in this huge valley surrounded by waterfalls with these giant trees and a rainbow, very reminiscent of the latter half of the HD version. The actual mission isn't even hard or that special or anything, but I think the fact this is essentially your reward for 100% in the game makes me think of it more as like a victory lap, I guess. It gives it this energy that no other level or mission in the game has, and I find it really cool. There's another mission in Jungle Joyride, and it takes place on this kind of cliffside area, sort of like the beginning of the full day stage, and you make your way down to the goal ring. Not that interesting, but we'll come back to it in a minute. Next mission we'll be looking at is the last ring mission, which takes place in this super cool cave. But the most interesting part is that if you turn on free cam and take the camera out of bounds, you can see geometry from the fucking previous stage. And sure enough, if you take the camera past the goal ring in that mission, you can see the entrance of the cave along with an entirely unused part of the stages bridging the gap between the two, suggesting that these two were probably supposed to be one act, which would have been super cool. Like, dude, this would have been so fucking cool as like a Jungle Joyride Act 2, especially with the cave section. Like, you have all of these cool top and bottom routes that you can go through with the holes in the ground and shit. And then you get to the final room, which would look really good with a goal ring in it, just saying. But seriously though, this reminds me of something like Lost World from SA1. Like, I genuinely wish they didn't relegate these cool stages for missions. I guess it was either because of time restraints or hardware restraints in the PS2's case. I have no idea. There's a lot more to unpack here, but if you want to learn more, I would highly recommend checking out these two videos from the Storm. They're honestly incredible and go into way more detail than I did and cover a lot more stuff. Anyway though, I think that's about as much as I wanted to talk about with this video. I haven't really made a video like this, but I hope you enjoyed and I appreciate you watching till the end. But one more thing though. They fucking remove this tree in the PS2 version.